And it's Christian Butzek. Welcome to Rapid Fire Real Estate, where I take you through half a dozen topics, spend a couple minutes on each, and you can take that intel with you out into the marketplace. Okay, today's topics, 6 topics I want to touch on here. We're going to talk about the value of buying a second parking spot. This new tax ruling by the Tax Court of Canada, 13% tax on Airbnb properties that are being sold. That's a big one. Third, getting a building that's principally owner-occupied, so buying into a strata where there's not too many rentals. Fourth, discussions about a 72-hour notice period instead of the current 24-hour notice period given to tenants upon showings, and dollarizing the value of selling a property for you sellers who have long-term tenants and what that means to you, your bank account when you're selling it. Okay, and of course I'm going to ask you just before we jump into that is if you enjoy the stories, the content, please subscribe. We love having you and give us a thumbs up. Okay, first topic here on second parking spots. I'm selling a listing right now, and the competition is not only other sellers, it's also the developer that still has some remaining units to sell. And what the developer is doing is throwing in a second parking spot for free. Typically, this parking spot would cost $35,000. It's obviously enticing to a lot of buyers, but I think you need to do the money math on this and really weigh your two options. In this instance, it's probably about 12-minute walk from a SkyTrain. We're looking at Coquitlam, so if this were in the boondocks, out somewhere in the hayfields, maybe in Langley, that second parking spot would carry a lot of weight. But since you are in a city close to a SkyTrain, if you buy and then look to sell in the future, hoping to realize a higher price, like $35K, for example, you may not, because future buyers, most couples are only one-car families, and they don't see a value to 2 parking spot condos. Okay. And another way to do this is, if it's going to cost you $35,000 to buy a second spot, maybe ask yourself, how much does it cost to rent a spot, right? In this particular case, there's a lot of seniors that live there. They're not even going to drive. So I'm sure they'll give you a parking spot for $75 a month, maybe $100. So if you know you're going to live there for 5 years, 60 months times $100 tells you that's $6K. So instead of spending $35,000 for 5 years, maybe you just spend $6,000 on a monthly rental basis. And it's a lot easier on your pocketbook. So I don't see too much value in a second parking spot for most buyers today, especially if you're really in a central urban location close to a SkyTrain. Okay, second topic I wanted to get to today is this new ruling from the Tax Court of Canada that any short-term listed properties there's a 13% tax applicable upon the sale, upon the entire value. So I guess there was a ruling earlier in 2024. There was an appeal, but the appeal was dismissed. And what it amounts to, what you need to know, is that if you bought a condo to Airbnb 3 years ago for $950, and now you're selling it for $1 million, and you've Airbnb'd it the entire time, this ruling says you're going to pay $130,000 upon the sale. Yes, let me say that again, 13% upon the total value because it's considered commercial property. So 13%, $130,000. Now, my personal opinion on this is going a little bit crazy here from the tax court. I mean, you could really ruin people. I mean, someone buying that property, whether they were buying it for short-term or long-term purposes, to all of a sudden hit them with $100,000 tax 3-4 years later, I mean, it's ruinous. You would destroy people. And so somebody in Ottawa has to get a grip here and look at this. I mean, we can understand if going forward, these are the rules, and people understand these are the rules as of now. But to apply it retroactively sounds incredibly ruinous. I know there's a lot of hate online towards mom and pops who Airbnb specifically. I've never shared that. I traveled to Singapore and stayed in an Airbnb, and I loved the experience. There was a German couple down the hall from me. The Singaporean lady was in the other room, and we'd kind of get up and have chats in the middle of the night. So I kind of enjoyed it, but it's faux pas here in Vancouver. A few other thoughts on this is my understanding is the GST would be on the entire value, and that would replace any capital gain tax that you would be paying since it's not your principal residence. Now, one loophole potentially here is that if you converted it back to a long-term rental, that this GST would not apply upon the sale if it was a long-term rental at that point. But boy, you really need to talk to a real estate lawyer if that's your situation, because this is new and it's a fluid situation, and I don't have all the answers. So just talk to a real estate lawyer on this one, okay? But definitely be aware of it. Third, talked to someone earlier this week about she wanted to buy into a building that's principally owner-occupied because it's quieter. This person works from home a couple of days a week, and she just wants a well-run strata. And that's not uncommon. A lot of buyers talk like that and want that lifestyle. And I probably will too when I'm a lot older. So you cannot, remember, BC banished the rental restrictions. So no strata can impose rental restrictions. There's 55 plus buildings where everybody's got to be older. But if that doesn't apply, then you just cannot enforce that rule. The best thing you can do is you talk to an agent like myself, and I can go through the history of that strata. And if I go back 3, 4, 5, 6 years, I can check to see whether or not they had rental restrictions at that time. And that would tell us that, give us a yes or a no. And if they did, it's likely that today, there's still a higher proportion of owner-occupiers, maybe 70, maybe 80%, versus renters in the building, because not every, it'll take a good 5 to 10 years before the owners who want to rent out actually get around to it. So anyway, that's the best way to work through that situation, is look through the history of the building and whether it was a rental only building in the past. Sorry, owner-occupied only in the past. Fourth, there's some discussion about a 72-hour notice period. Today, as a listing agent, if I've got a tenanted occupied property, I need to give 24 hours notice to the tenant. Now, I think I have above average communication skills, so I'm able to have fairly excellent relationships with the tenants I've dealt with. I think all of them have been pretty good, except maybe a couple. And reasonable too. And 24 hours has never been an issue. There's some discussion that rule is going to change to a 72-hour period. So for you owners, landlords, what that means for you is it's going to be harder to sell your property because it's harder to get buyers to get in to test drive it, touch it, feel it, smell it. And without that, they're not going to make an offer, right? And once we can get them inside, people can visualize themselves there. They get excited about the property. That's when you're more likely to get an offer and a sale. And this means it's just going to be harder. The best workaround or work through, it's not really around, is to work with your tenant. I think a mutual agreement to end tenancy today is still the best option. And really, all it means is calling the tenant or meeting with them face to face and saying, look, here are my plans. For personal reasons, I've decided to sell, and I'd like to sell the property vacant. Is there anything I can offer you? And perhaps you can pay for their moving expenses or throw them a $1,000, because by having the property empty, vacant, it's going to make it a lot easier for us to sell, and you're going to make a lot more money in the process, and it's going to take a lot less time. So keep that in mind. And that brings me to my last point, which is you as a landlord, you want to dollarize the value of selling your property tenanted versus vacant. And what I mean by that is I would say apples to apples, if Bob and Susan are selling their property that they live in, let's say their 2-bedroom condo, and on the same floor around the corner, same layout, everything, there's a tenanted property, it's probably going to sell for a difference of about $25,000 or give or take. Just because, tenants aren't incentivized to sell. They don't get anything from the process. And it's not going to show as well, usually. So what that means for you guys, for you landlords out there, is it's really in your best interests to throw the tenants a bone, because otherwise you're probably taking a $25,000, $30,000 hit on your sale. And that's the best way I can dollarize the impact of trying to sell a tenanted occupied property, especially if this new 72-hour rule comes into effect. So that is what I wanted you to know. Finally, I guess one more thing I wanted to talk about is I met an individual. I talked to someone actually in the last couple of weeks, and this person was saying that, they really regretted not buying in 2008. Like, whoa, we're in 2024 right now. I mean, first thing I'd say is you don't need to be that hard on yourself. Sometimes timing doesn't work out for personal reasons. We change careers. And I don't, why 2008? Like, why not 2015 or 2020 before the coronavirus? Someone bought in 2020 is doing great today. And that was only 4 years ago. So I think that just in general, nobody needs to be this hard on themselves and say, like, from the day I, graduated high school, I should have been out there buying a property. Look, for a lot of us, we don't buy our first property until our mid-30s. And that was my case. So, don't be hard on yourself. Vancouver's a tough market. It's the big leagues of global real estate. I mean, you are in the majors, and it's tough for even for professional couples. It can take a few months. It takes a substantial income and a lot of savings, and it takes 5-7 years to earn those savings. So. You don't have to start with the very best. You don't have to start with, lakefront, waterfront, top floor, penthouse. There's a lot of ways to get into the market and get on that escalator of riding wealth. And that's what I want you to take away from it, and be forgiving of yourself. You don't have to be so tough. Okay, guys, if you enjoyed the content, the stories, leave a comment below. I appreciate you being here, and subscribe. We do love having you. See you next time. Thanks.